And I love that video is perfect. We forget what God's word already says. And in Matthew 10, Jesus is he's commissioning his disciples. He's going to send them out. And that's always a fearful thing. Anytime you have to leave the comfort of this building or the comfort of Jesus' presence there and go out and actually do something, that's a scary thing. And so he gives them all these kind of warnings. He's like, this isn't going to be easy. And he gives them all these kind of, watch out for this, look out for these things. And in verse 26, he says, so do not be afraid of them being those who kind of persecute you or who will persecute you. He said, don't be afraid of them. There's nothing concealed that will not be discovered or hidden that will not be made known. What I tell you in the dark, speak in the daylight. What I whisper in your ear, proclaim from the roofs. Verse 28 says, do not be afraid of those who kill the body, but cannot kill the soul. Rather, be afraid of the one who can destroy both soul and body in hell. Good point, right? Verse 29, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall to the ground apart from the will of your Father. Even the very hairs of your head are all numbered. So don't be afraid, you who are worth more than many sparrows. And so I love this because Jesus says, listen, I care about the sparrows. Do you understand that? These things that are really kind of worthless, that it makes 2 to make the smallest amount of coin that we have, you know what I mean? I care about those things. So just imagine how much I care about you. I mean, because I'm not sending anyone to die for them, for sparrows. But what I've done is send my son to die for you. And he says, I care for the sparrows, but I love even more the other part, because it kind of reminds me of people that I know, and you probably know people just like this, that are just full of worthless information. Like someone who would know the flight model of the X-Wing fighters, you know what I mean, and that are part of the rebellion or whatever, or people that would know the names of the Klingon troopers, stuff like that, like Wade Boggs' greatest food, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Just like nerds. Are you with me here? Okay. And it just reminded me of that, and I'm thinking about that. I'm a nerd, but it's okay. And I'm reading this, and I'm like, verse 30, it says, and even the hairs of your head are numbered. And God is a nerd for us. Are you with me? You know what I mean? He's just obsessed. He is so in love with you. He's so completely consumed with you and with where you're going and with who you are that he knows how many hairs are on your head. There's nothing that can't be useful. That can't be useful information, but God cares that much about who you are and where you're going and what you're doing. He is completely consumed with you. And so, can we really be afraid or worry that we matter? Can we really be struggling with, what am I here for? What am I doing? Why am I here? Am I ever going to do anything great when God knows every hair on your head? It's just comforting to know that. And but we don't always feel that way, do we? I mean, God says, but we struggle with it sometimes, and we all do. We're all just like, I don't feel that way. I don't feel useful. I don't feel like I'm worth anything. And in Luke chapter 12, it continues with this sparrow theme. He says, are not 5 sparrows sold for 2 pennies, yet not one of them is forgotten by God? And so 2 sparrows are how much? 1 penny. 5 sparrows are 2 pennies. So it's like a buy 4, get 1, right, with sparrows. And so imagine being the 5th sparrow. It's like it's worthless. That sparrow is, it's just kind of given, I don't have any use for this. And then we feel that way sometimes. We just feel like we're useless, like we're the 5th sparrow, that nothing can be done with us, that we really have nothing to give back to society. And there's a story, it's a story that I've read a couple times growing up, and I've heard it over and over, but only read it myself 5 or 6 times. And it's really about a 5th sparrow, and it starts off in Samuel. And Samuel's we'll get there in just a second, Rhonda. Samuel is kind of it's a transitional book that takes us from what we call the Judges period, which was like this roller coaster of it's like a spiritual roller coaster where, man, they're with God, they're without God, they're far away, they're with other idols, they're only worshiping God, and so it's this crazy roller coaster. And what happens is God introduces Samuel into the picture, and basically the people all go to Samuel like, listen, this is not working for us, this whole Judges thing. And I don't know if you're like me, when I always heard the Judges, like I imagine like Supreme Court judges, you know what I mean? Like 5 of them like sitting around like telling the Israelites what to do. And maybe you think that this morning and you're like, wait, that's not what it's like? No, it was like they were called judges and they produced judgment. Like they came down, they like saved the Israelites. And so my mind was totally blown when I figured that out. And so what happens is Samuel is this last judge that comes in, and people go, we're sick of the judge thing. We want a king. And so they ask Samuel for a king, and Samuel goes to God, and he's like, they want a king. And God goes, well, I'm their king. What do they mean they want a king? And so he goes, well, give them what they want. And so Samuel goes to him, and he says, listen, you really don't want a king, because it's going to be bad. One person in charge of everything they're going to mess it all up. They're going to be selfish. They're going to steal. They're going to take. It's all about them. And so we pick it up here in 1 Samuel chapter 8, verse 19. It says, but the people refused to listen to Samuel. No, they said, we want a king over us. Then we will be like all the other nations, with a king to lead us and to go out before us and fight our battles. And so I don't know, I read this, and I just feel like it would break God's heart to say the one word, we want to be like all the other nations. Because God set out to make them different, right? I mean, the whole thing was that the people would be totally different and that they would be a light in a dark world. And they said, listen, we just want to be part of the dark world. We want to be like everyone else, so just give us a king. And so they do. He gives them a king. And so long story short, he anoints Saul as the first king. And guess what happens? He's corrupt. And he does exactly what Samuel tells him to do. And so, just long story short, we'll jump to chapter 15. Verse 10, then the word of the Lord came to Samuel, I am grieved that I've made Saul king, because he has turned away from me and has not carried out my instructions. And Samuel was troubled, and he cried out to the Lord all night long. So jump to the next chapter. The Lord said to Samuel, how long will you mourn for Saul, since I have rejected him as king over Israel? So it's kind of a divine get over it, right? Fill your horn with oil and be on your way. I'm sending you to Jesse of Bethlehem. Right, we know that city. I've chosen one of his sons to be king. But Samuel said, how can I go? Saul's going to hear about it and kill me. And so basically Samuel had told Saul that God's not feeling you right now. You really screwed this thing up. And so basically what Saul knows at that point is there's going to be another king. And basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to do everything I can to stop that from happening. And so Samuel knows that. And he is worried because as soon as he knows that he's going to go anoint someone else to be king, that Saul's going to try to kill him. And so that's the worry right there. Let's go back to where it was. But Samuel said, okay, how can I go? Saul will hear about it and kill me. The Lord said, take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to sacrifice, and I will show you what to do. You are to anoint for me the one I indicate. And Samuel did what the Lord said. And when he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town trembled when they met him. Because listen, when a judge comes to your town, it's not usually a good thing. And so they're freaking out, right? They're like, what's going to happen? I mean, hail, storms, something's going to go down. And Samuel replied, they asked, do you come in peace? And Samuel replied, yes, in peace. I've come to sacrifice to the Lord. So consecrate yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. And so then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice.